Before we, Good morning, everyone. Before we introduce today's speaker, I'd like to briefly highlight the New Jersey Lawyers Assistance Program we call NJLAP. So, NJLAP is a free and strictly confidential resource available to all New Jersey lawyers, judges, law students, and law graduates. For over 30 years, we've helped members of the legal community navigate challenges related to stress, mental health, substance use, burnout, career transitions, and more, all with compassion, discretion, and zero reporting to the Office of Attorney Ethics, the courts, or the state bar. In December 23, the New Jersey Supreme Court amended Rule 1:20-9 and a couple other rules, but the point is to allow third-party referrals. And that means that a colleague, judge, friend, or even a family member who now can confidentially contact us at NJLAP if they're concerned about a legal professional's well-being. The referred individual retains full confidentiality and control over the process, but the goal is early intervention before the problems escalate. So we are here to remind every New Jersey lawyer and law professional that we are never alone. Support is available, stigma-free, and tailored to the demands of this profession. So this is actually our fourth annual Wellbeing in the Law Week, and we have it's a whole week of presentations, and today is on social well-being, and our speaker is Eric Rodriguez. And Eric currently serves as the Education Director for Karen Treatment Centers, and he helps, he's held previous positions. I'm not going to read the bio, it's on there. He is a therapist, and he's here to speak today about social well-being. So Eric, I'm going to let you take it.
Thank you, Eric. I'm going to pull up my screen and then I'm going to get started. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us today. As Eric said, my name is Eric Rodriguez. We're going to be talking about during Lawyer Wellbeing Week, the role of social connection for a thriving legal career and the imperative nature and importance of social connection. So that's my direct contact information. I'll have it at the end as well. If you need anything, please reach out. I'll tell you a little bit about myself throughout this presentation. I also just want to give a shout out to Eric and NJLAP and all of our laps really across the entire country for offering services, confidential third-party services to the profession, to the legal profession. The legal profession is a very unique profession that is the only profession really in any profession in any professional setting that offers these kind of services. So it's a very special, and it speaks to the level of importance on physical, mental, and emotional well-being. And it also speaks to the level of importance in the oversight of the Bar Association and other individuals that are really driving the importance of well-being for law. So I just wanted to give a shout out to all of our JLAPs around the country and certainly NJLAP for hosting today. So today we're going to really talk about the critical role of social connection in fostering well-being among legal professionals. Talk about stress, burnout, mental health challenges, and the prevalency in the legal field, and also how to explore how social connections can mitigate these issues. And oftentimes when we think about well-being, you think about physical health, you think about sleep, you think about nutrition, you think about all those different pieces of your physical health of kind of exercise, kind of what you're doing. And even in the emotional side, when you start talking about goals and aspirations and value and purpose of what you're doing, we briefly mention social connection, but we really don't spend a lot of time talking about that component of well-being. So I was really excited to be able to talk to you all about this today because it is an oftentimes easily glossed over subject when you start to talk about well-being. So let's talk about isolation, social connections, and the benefits of social connections, strategies for building connections, Also for like managing attorneys, supervising attorneys, firm leaders, talk about the organizational and firm aspects of things, or group aspects of things, and certainly the sustainability and why this is so important for each and every legal professional to focus on connection and social connection for success in their legal career. So why lawyers? I think some of this is y'all are pretty aware of. It's always interesting to me. Nowadays, we're spending a lot of times, and actually, JLAPs are spending time actually in the university and collegiate setting to really start to talk about the importance of mental health, behavioral health, and also addiction, and the healthy coping strategies to our future lawyers that are coming into the firm, just because it's so important to start to talk about this stuff very, very, very early. Because in our profession now, we hear and we experience colleagues and we hear about this through well-being and HR and wellness benefits and certainly through JLAP about the imperative nature and focus on behavioral health. Because the profession itself has anywhere between 3 to 6 times the rate of the normal population when you think about stress, anxiety, depression, burnout, substance use. It's when and it's not abnormal to and really mimics other professions such as the medical profession where there's just a high level of stress and demand on a profession. And the professionals that are experiencing this high level of stress and demand have impact. And that can be family impact, it can be mental health impact, it can be substance use impact. It just has a lot of pressure and burden associated with it. And also when we start to talk about social connections, also has a lot of burden. It also fosters, and I see this a lot in direct practice. So I've been training and educating within well-being within the legal field for the last 3 years, but I've been treating lawyers for almost a decade and a half. For almost 15 years, I've been treating individuals with legal professionals that are coming in that are trying to figure out or make a change in their life because something is negatively impacting them. And it might be negatively impacting relationships. It might be causing undue anxiety, panic attacks, hopelessness and despair, a lack of purpose in their career. There's so many different ways lawyers come to see me. And I've really enjoyed working with this subset of individuals. I think professional attorneys are so giving of themselves that you want to help. And knowing the stress and the burden associated within the different types of law that exist, you feel for that, and you really want to help someone that's going through that. But why I say that is isolation is a big topic when someone comes to see me or when I'm talking just in conferences, when I'm talking to many different lawyers in different conferences, they talk about the notion of isolation and the feeling of disconnection. So it's really important to think about the relationships and the social relationships that we have in our lives. And there is a degree of loneliness associated with it. It is a pressure cooker environment. Depending on what law you practice, I understand there's a spectrum of law, and I mean, if you're doing family law or defense, it's going to be very different, than contractual law or something like. There's just a very, very, very there's a continuum of law out there, and there's going to be different pressure markers for whichever law you practice, and even the level of if you're in a big law. If you're in kind of a, medium-sized firm, if you're a small kind of office firm, 5 to 50, there's degrees of also stress associated with what type of law you're in. But it's all long hours, high stakes, client demands. There's always a level of pressure or demand. And then for us as professionals, really to be able to we feel that. So we want to kind of meet the burden where it is as well. If you are, depending on where you sit within your career, there can be some adversarial settings associated with, depending on where you're at within your career. And even if you're early on in your career versus late in your career, there's kind of a varying degree there. And perfectionism is a very common experience in law. Results of this, mental and emotional well-being suffers. So what is lawyer well-being? I think I like to break it out into these kind of four subcategories. You have the emotional resilience. We always talk about resiliency, and resiliency is a process of building. And you're not born with resiliency. You build resiliency. It's a skill set. So when you start to talk about emotional resiliency, it's a building of the ability to identify emotions, to identify yourself, to be able to internally recognize where you are, and to be able to then put action into, your space, your environment, where you are, where you work, your family life, whatever that might be. Creating this notion of psychological safety and the positive relationships that are all around us. But sometimes we have to, and oftentimes we have to take action. And that can be a hard. I'm going to talk about kind of how we take action, but it can be a hard thing to do. And really the work-life integration. Again, working with attorneys, work and life can be very conflicting, just due to the demands of the profession, but also the ability to take off the lawyer hat, and walk into your home and be a husband or a wife or a partner or a father or a mother, or, it's hard to do. And then you also bring everything that has impacted you, depending on what kind of law you practice, into the home with you. You can't just you can't completely disconnect. That's just not can't do it. No one has the ability to completely disconnect. So you have all that dynamic. So the relationships sometimes are impacted as well. So this work-life integration is very valuable when you start to talk about social connection and lawyer well-being. I think a social connection is definitely the X factor for resilience. When you think about social connection, if you have strong social connection, you reduce stress. I'll talk about the impact of that on your physical health. You enhance the ability to cope and problem solve, so you can manage more, which is important if you have a lot of work to do. It also creates a sense of belonging and connection. It creates a sense of value to how you show up every single day. It also is a fuel. Social connection is a motivating factor and is really a fuel of engagement. And we always talk about creativity, being a bedrock of like growth, also fosters the sense of creativity and companionship and connection, and will drive long-term success. So today we'll talk about kind of the roadmap, what I think of like the roadmap of connection. Talk about isolation, talk about connection, and certainly the benefits of connection. Talk about personal and firm level strategies and why this matters, really for your future, but also for the future if you are overseeing a firm or managing attorney, like why this is so important for your offices, your firms. So isolation in the in the profession, heavy workloads oftentimes discourage connection, discourage socialization. There is certainly confidentiality aspects in sharing. And there's also a culture potentially of competition and competition over collaboration, which leads to emotional and professional loneliness. I have heard many times the one individual described it so well, sitting in a law office in big law, hundreds of people around me and feeling completely isolated and alone. That when he said that to me, I'm a visual person. I think a lot of people are visual learners. It really spoke to how you can feel in the presence of so many, but feel so isolated and so lonely. So just because there's a lot of people around you doesn't mean that you can't experience loneliness. And I think everyone probably on this call at one point in a time or another in your life has felt that sense of loneliness and disconnection, even when you're around a lot of people. And this profession sometimes leads to that, that just the nature of the profession leads to that aspect of disconnection. And loneliness is more than just being alone. I think about loneliness is you have the actual connection, like the relationships you have today. And this can be relationships in your household, this can be relationships at work, but you have your actual connection. And then you have your desired connection. You have your actual connection and your desired connection. And the gap between your actual connection and what you want those relationships and what you're yearning for, maybe even if you're not voicing or sharing that, that gap is loneliness. So when I think about kind of bridging the gap of loneliness, how do we bridge what the relationships you have and the connections that you have today and what you want them to look like, or how connected you want to be with individuals around you or certain individuals around you? The most recent study from the Bar Association said identified it was thousands of lawyers that reported, and they gathered tons of information, but 61% of lawyers reported feeling lonely regularly. So that speaks to the impact of loneliness associated with lawyers and legal professionals. We also there's this sense of stoicism and a self-resilient culture kind of around all vulnerability is often seen as weakness. That's in profession, but that's also cultural. We have this cultural notion of stoicism and staunchness, and the also gender aspects of vulnerability that certainly impact the comfortability for individuals to be vulnerable, and then ultimately seeing the word that, even if I used to give this I used to give training on specifically on vulnerability, and I oftentimes said, like, what is the first word that comes to your mind of vulnerability? Like, vulnerability is, and people say, weakness. And, it's an interesting, just automatic response that's very much culturally built in to how we are developed over our entire lives. So it's really starting to, where I'm going to talk about vulnerability in a couple different ways today. It's really about changing the narrative around what is vulnerability. Um, Emotional openness is also critical in connection and can certainly be discouraged or felt discouraged in different firms. We train in several different firms, and sometimes I struggle because I see things that are not healthy, or are unhealthy cultures and environments that are discouraging. And I think it's because of stress and fast pace and a lot of just pressure. And people just really can't even see outside of their lanes. But I see individuals struggle, because people struggle when they're in that kind of pressure cooker for too long, to be able to really be healthy, and look internally at yourself and have these kind of connections. And lawyers can be, I think of lawyers as a very play hard, work hard, play hard mentality, like some other professions out there. Also kind of just tough it out and kind of work through it. So it really does block that connection and support associated with it. We have a lot. I spoke about a couple of these. There's a lot of consequences of disconnections, anxiety, depression, burnout. But there's also decreased performance, innovation, and job satisfaction. So if you're looking at if you are a partner, if you're a managing attorney, and you're looking at, okay, like billable hours, pressure, we need to get this stuff done. And by investing a little bit on wellness and emotional wellness and balance and consistency, we're actually going to get more out of our attorneys and out of our professionals. So sometimes I like to flip the question, because it does have a negative impact on and decrease in performance, if we are kind of drive. It also makes us make poor decisions. So the consequences of disconnections, we can actually mess up in our work, which is, certainly not where we want to be, and especially depending on what kind of law you're practicing. There is some ethical considerations associated with it. So looking at the power of social connections. So social connections, supportive relationships, personally, professionally, friends, colleagues, mentors, teams. We talk about kind of the build on trust, empathy, mutual care. All these things are vital when you start to think about social connection. Connections build resiliency. One of the most overlooked, but one of the most foundational levels of resiliency is built on connection. People with strong social support bounce back faster. We problem solve better. We are supported more. We have the ability to bounce back faster. Bouncing back is a tenet of resiliency. And then the connection also provides emotional grounding and perspective. So it can really help us manage our mood and our emotions. And it can be a mitigating factor for some of the negative things that might come about with, angers or sad, I think of the extremes, anger and sadness. Like we can really mitigate some of those more extremes and come back into the middle a little bit better with a strong connections and strong connectional resilience. Also promotes that self-regulation in high stress periods. Law is a high stress profession. This is going to promote self-regulation, better work environments, better conditions, better output, better performance. Connection is vital in that resiliency build. Connection also reduces stress. It lowers cortisol. So cortisol is stress hormone. You have it in your brain, you get stress, cortisol is released. It puts pressure on your system. It actually increases production until it hits a peak. And once you hit your peak, it's outside of awareness. It's in your brain. You become not. You can have anxieties. You can have panic attacks. You can have reduced performance. There is a curve that kind of you go off on the backside of it. And cortisol is the chemical that impacts all of that process. When you think about social connection, think about laughing, think about being with someone you care about, thinking about, just talking about your day and the burdens you have, or the impact that, or what you saw, or what you heard, and being able to express that ultimately increases your oxytocin, or your feel-good chemical, lowering your stress, lowering the cortisol level, because they impact each other, and making you happy and more content, and then able to process and then wake up the next morning with a clear mind and then go about your day. So chemically, connection is vastly, vastly important on the stress process and also the happiness process with the cortisol and oxytocin. Connection improves performance, better communication, better teamwork, better vested interest in the person next to you, better vested interest in the organization or the firm, better vested interest in being successful within the team. So connection is vital in that process. Also in the problem solving, motivation, and I always like this, like happy lawyers do better work. I love that phrase, and I think it can be very catchy or cliche in a way, but it's so true. And if it's for all of these things that make that so imperative, that statement's so true. Happy lawyers do better work. I love it. It also creates sustainability. It's the framework. Connection is the framework of sustainability. So relationships provide long-term career scaffolding. I love that phrase, that scaffolding, because it really is the picture of bridging, building, forming. That is the relationships are that career build. It also prevents burnout and emotional fatigue, that we all experience fatigue. We all experience levels of burnout throughout our career. If you're like me this week, very, very, very busy. I'm like, tired, 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 tired. I have to find ways to recharge my batteries. And what does that look like? And one of those pieces is social connection. It's a level of sustainability so that you can keep moving forward. It also increases the likelihood of staying in the profession. Again, lots of people I see, it's a struggle because struggle to they see me and they question their why. Why am I doing, or why am I continuing to be in the profession or do the type of law or change law? Like there's oftentimes a lot of questions on their work. So this is also a way to improve the profession, but also sustain the profession. So it's great tangible assets for individuals and strategies for individuals. Build his peer support network. Again, I'm going over to the ABA annual conference right after this. I was just over speaking at a ALA down in Delaware. I'm all over the place at different conferences, different groups, subgroups, and I think that it's really important to kind of find your group and find your niche and really connect with individuals, with whether it be within your type of law that you're practicing to really better yourself, but also better your ability to support others and support yourselves. As I talk about mentorship, I think it's vital to get connected, stay connected into a group. And there's many different forms to be able to do that. As I said, mentorship, one of my favorite things, personally and professionally, mentorship absolutely matters, and find mentors for guidance, and career direction. I always tell individuals, find someone that you connect with that really is, that you look at and you aspire to be. That person, you just see them and you're like, wow, they have it. They have that thing. They have what I want. And then really connect yourself and talk to them and build a relationship to better yourself. Because that's really what this is about, what mentorship's about. And it's also doing for someone else. So the ability to have a mentor, but also to mentor others. I always think about, my mentor. I always thought they gave me so much. Um, and I was kind of taking, but what I realized when I became a mentor is as a mentor, you gain so much in mentoring others, almost more than what you do in the mentee relationship in the reverse. So I think that, building connection, building groups, but also mentoring, finding mentors and mentoring others, is hugely, hugely, hugely beneficial. And it supports learning and trust. It supports vulnerability, and it supports your ability to move your career forward pretty rapidly as well. Practice healthy vulnerability. Some people, when you start to talk about vulnerability, like, what do you want me to do? Like, walk into a courtroom and cry? No, 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 we're not talking about that. That's the extreme. Healthy vulnerability. How do you start to be vulnerable with people around you? And usually it's starting small and it's opening up the challenges that you might be facing either in your career or in your personal life. But I always say, like, it's also an opportunity to, like, build relationships and connections. So if you ask someone for help on something that you're doing within your profession, even if you know or you believe that you can do it, that creates reciprocality. That goes, okay, well, they asked me for help, or they were considerate enough or thought so highly of me that they came to me to ask for help. And now I have the ability to then ask for help from them. It opens the door for connection and vulnerability. Small steps. It seems very small, and ultimately, sometimes you know what you're doing, and maybe asking just seems like, oh, that's just an extra step, and it's just going to take more time. But it's more than that. It's about building vulnerability. It's about building connection. It's also about building authenticity and deeper bonds. Authenticity is so important in career progression. When you meet someone and you feel that that person is fake or unauthentic, it immediately is a pushback to it. So if you're trying to wear 100 different hats and be what you think you should be as a lawyer, as a husband, as a defense attorney, as a family law, as a paralegal, whatever, being yourself is one of the most important aspects of connection, relationships, healthy vulnerability, and also career mobility. So when I entered, a decade ago, when I entered, this is my second profession, I thought I had to be something. And I realized through the coaching process that vulnerability is critical and being yourself is critical in really being what you want to be or being that person that you look at what you should be. That authenticity is critical. So take a look at that. Work-life integration, schedule time. We live in a crazy world, lots of schedules, lots of conflicts. If we want to, create value and purpose in our personal relationships, we have to build scheduled time around it. Also, setting boundaries is about health. It's not about like you can't do it or you shouldn't do it or whatever that might be. It's really about your health and your ability to be successful. Boundaries are a healthy process. And we have this overworked, like, oh my God, I'm so busy. Oh, I can't do that. It's almost a kind of a badge of honor when you think, oh, it's crazy. I haven't slept in, I work till 8 p.m. today and I'm not sleeping. And you kind of wear that a little bit. It's a US, it doesn't happen in the rest of the world. It's a US cultural kind of infusion piece of things. And sometimes, depending on what profession you're in, certainly in law, you hear this a lot. And sometimes it's about changing the language that we use to change the culture. And sometimes change the language that we use ultimately significantly impacts our how we feel about our life and how we drive purpose in our life. Changing language can ultimately impact really how we feel internally and how we view things. So make sure you're purposeful in the language that you use. Getting involved, volunteerism. I go back to the why. Like, why do you do pro bonos and volunteerism, and maybe even take something on like outside of like kind of your duties in your offices and in your professions, and connect yourself with something else is hugely rewarding. I don't work with kids in my profession, but I volunteer in working with kids outside of my work, and it's very rewarding work to me because that's something that is impactful and important for me, and that I wanted to be involved in. Hobbies, getting back into tennises and volleyball, just all kind of hobbies, rock climbing and biking, and there's lots of different hobbies, cards and clubs, and that you can kind of get involved that can share in that connection and share in that community aspect of social well-being. Community enhances both the identity and well-being. It's a core feature of who you believe you are. So internally, and this is a biological thing, community is needed, and we're looking for group. Even if we are fairly reclusive, there's a biological drive for inclusion. So if you lean into that, you're going to feel happier. You're going to feel better about yourself. You're going to feel better about who you are and the direction your life is taking. Organizationals, creating that culture of belonging, as I said, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, can be will be very rewarding. Inclusion, psychological safety is critical. Recognizing and bringing everyone to the table. Sometimes we can be quick to make decisions, and sometimes the decision needs to be made. And we can also hear, even though there is a decision that needs to be made and it is X. To have that inclusivity and to bring people to the table is valuable, and also makes other people feel valued and feel warranted and also feel like the work that they're doing is valuable. It also encourages that cross-team collaboration, which is vitally important for growth. Well-being programs, you're all on this today. As I said, I speak to lots of lawyers, I speak to lots of firms, I speak to lots of committees, I speak to lots of associations. The people that are on this call, they're hearing this, they're a part of Well-being Week. Please take it back to your firm, speak it from the mountaintops. that this is an important topic. It's imperative to talk about, and we need to press forward, and we need to be champions of mental health. We need to be champions of counseling. We need to be champions of, the reality of the stress within the profession, and practicing well-being and mindfulness, and building building the avenues to sustain a healthy work culture, because that's really what this is all about. Social opportunities, they're all over the place. Every firm, every group, everyone's doing happy hours and lunches and stuff, and retreats, etc. I mean, that's built in from law school the whole way up. But building healthy opportunities and activities, and really creating an opportunities for that social connection, in healthy ways, and sometimes that is limiting some of the unhealthy activities that can be overly indulged, and that what we see is overly indulged. Celebrate your wins and your milestones, and build genuine connection. That authenticity is so vitally important. Leaders should model vulnerability. It always has a top-down process. It's hard to go bottom up. It's usually you're heading up a very steep road. So normalizing that mental health, normalizing vulnerability within leadership, within partners, and transitioning that down into the firm will create sustainability and health within the firm itself. Share resources openly. Again, if you're on here, I support and also really encourage everyone to kind of be that champion, and to kind of open those doors and to normalize and push forward. There has to be a champion within for wellness and mental health, to be able to have that sustainability and change. Reviewing schedules and workloads and billables and wellness benefits and time off, all those things are important when it comes to wellness, but also just to be able to be inclusive, not single out. Sometimes changing the culture, it takes a lot. It comes from the top down, but looking at all these things can be important in health and healthy working habits, and not working 120 hours a week. So at the end of the day, lawyers face unique isolation challenges. They face unique burdens, unique stressors, unique mental health, unique substance use issues, unique isolations, unique loneliness. This is the oftentimes the reality of the legal profession. Social connection is that bedrock. It enhances all of this well-being and performance. It's really kind of spurs the ability for creativity and growth, spurs the ability for people to sustain being in their career, being happy in their career, being self-driven in their career, and ultimately being successful and driving success for others. Individuals and institutions must act. Again, I champion you guys to be champions. And certainly if you are, at a level where you have influence, on the firm, the culture, the office, I would echo that and say, hey, be a champion for that, drive change, bring this to the office, believe in these messages, because they do really impact ultimately the bottom line of the firms themselves. And connection is sustainability. Connection fosters the ability to sustain and be successful long term. Lawyers, reach out, build community, be real, be authentic, be yourselves. If you're a firm leader, again, champion that policies, and prioritize the human connection, the connection for sustainability for the firm itself. This is my contact information. I really appreciate everyone being here today and spending time with us as we talk about connection and the importance of connection. I am available to anyone and everyone. I am oftentimes away, but I will answer emails at the drop of a hat. So if you need anything, shoot me an email. Love to talk to you. And if you ever need any help, I'm also here. And certainly, all JLAP in New Jersey is always next to you guys. And walking this road with you for mental health, for behavioral health, for any relationship issues, anything that you need. And they also let us know when we can help as well. So thank you so much. And I appreciate everyone today, and please have a good rest of your day.
Well, thank you, Eric. We still have a couple minutes left, but I just want to get another point across that even though we're supposed to be known throughout the state, by attorneys, I find that a lot of attorneys I run into don't even know we exist. Now, I remember in law school, I went to law school in New York, and the New York Lawyers Assistance Program came and presented my first year. And I know I've gone and presented at Rutgers since I've been working here with New Jersey. And yet people seem to forget that we're there. So again, the point is that we are here, we are free, we are confidential. If you're struggling or you know someone in the profession that's struggling, we provide referrals. We'll help ourselves depending on what the nature of the issue is, but we're here. And please remember that. And if you encounter anyone that you think can benefit, from us, call us. You can call us directly. You can have them call us. Just remember, we are here to help, and we're free, and we are confidential. We don't speak to the court. We don't speak to the ethics committee. We don't speak to anyone unless you ask us to, of course. So I think that's about it. I would like to fill up another 15 minutes, but I don't know what else to say. Eric, I want to thank you, though. That was a tremendous job. It really, a lot of information you packed in there and presented it very professionally. And I really appreciate, you coming and taking the time to do this.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I would echo what you said, and also sometimes what I hear is that for different laps across the country, that they kind of specialize in substance use, or like what we're seeing is, and I'm sure you would echo this, would be there's a lot of mental health that people are contacting specifically for anxiety, depression, or even relationship issues. So, people can reach out not in crisis. They can reach out just for simple social support because they're dealing with maybe a child who's struggling. It doesn't have to be something critical. It doesn't have to be something that is maybe substance use related. It's a support feature that is unlike anything else in any other profession. It's really an amazing aspect of law, of the legal profession, and use it. It's there for you, for anything that you're going through at all, at any point in time in your life ever. It's very unique, and it's really amazing. And I really just echo and appreciate, again, JLAPs across the country, but certainly NJLAP for what you guys do as well. So yeah, please, please, please reach out for anything. And it's a great, important, and valuable, and an amazing resource to have.
Thank you. That's absolute. I agree 100%. And yeah, and the other thing is, remember, you don't have to wait until there's a crisis. If you call us early, we can help prevent a crisis. So instead of doing damage control, we can do some preventative intervention, I guess. So we're going to end now. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And remember, tomorrow we have another presentation at 10 a.m. on emotional well-being. All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.